Hey everybody, Josh the RV Nerd here with Bish's RV with a video today that'll probably be the very opposite of what you would expect from a sales-based organization like this. I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to kind of break down a couple reasons why maybe the RV lifestyle is not for you. Like, almost quite literally making a video discussing about why maybe you shouldn't get an RV. Because the thing is, it's a very fun lifestyle, but it's not a thing that's for everybody. And before you go spending a lot of money getting into it, we kind of thought it'd be really nice to make sure it kind of sounds like it might be the right fit for you. And if you appreciate how we go out of our way to make almost a completely, converse inverse video of what you would expect us to make sure you hit that like button, leave us a little note that says, thank you if you found any of this helpful or, appropriate, and feel free to add in the comments things you agree with or things that maybe I missed that you think I should, somebody should consider before getting into anything. So I always talk enough, I talk way too much when we start. Let's get right into this. So the first thing, and I think it's probably a more obvious thing, RVs can be expensive, I've said many times in my videos that RVing is not the least expensive way to spend a weekend, but the thing is, there's more to the cost and ownership of an RV than just the price tag and or the monthly payment. Actually, I made a video about this. You might want to check out, I'll leave a link in the description to circle back on that if you want. But I call it the true cost of owning an RV because, there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep and sometimes storage or fuel costs, whether that be like the propane to run the RV or the fuel to tow it around or drive it around, as it were. And speaking of that, when we start talking about motorhomes and we start talking about fuel, sometimes people will ask me how many miles per gallon do they get. I almost think it's safer to approach a potential motorhome purchase by asking how many gallons per mile they will experience. So there's a lot more to it that goes into everything other than just, hey, how much is that? Like there's a lot of additional cost online, especially if it's your first RV. If you ever talk to somebody who just bought an RV or just bought a motorcycle, they end up with this giant collection of Amazon boxes on their front porch getting all the little doodads and accessories they need for it. It can add up, and it can add up quickly. Moving right along, another thing I think you really need to consider is not like, oh, it'll be fun when we get there, but when are you going to use it? Because RVing is kind of one of those things that you can't just sort of necessarily do at the spur of the moment right now like you used to be able to, largely due to things like campground congestion. And that's a problem that kind of ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. But it's something that, if you're not sure when you're going to be able to use it, if you're not going to be able to go out several times a year, maybe owning an RV isn't the right thing for you. That might be a situation where maybe you want to look toward like renting an RV or just getting something a little more simple, a little more basic. Maybe you don't want to go all in on the high-end thing with all the widgets and whiz-bangs. Because the thing is, these things are super fun, but they don't enjoy themselves if you don't make the time to take the time to go out there and have a good time. Then you're just going to have a bad time, basically, and you'll be paying for it all the live long day. So make sure you can realistically plan into your, annual schedule, are we actually going to be able to go out and use this thing? Because otherwise, kind of spinning your wheels, or actually quite literally, not. Another major thing to really consider is the fact that from a pure numbers perspective, the statistical chances of you breaking even on your use of an RV, like whatever you spend in it, if you're expecting to eventually get all that back, I would recommend taking a little bit of a step back and maybe asking around. That is not something that generally happens. Now, there was this really brief, weird period during like the pandemic fueled era in the RV industry the last couple years where there were some folks who bought campers in like 2018 or 19 and then sold or traded them for more than they paid for them in like the 2021 era. But that's because the market kind of went weird in a way that it doesn't normally go. That is not normal. So I guess it's not to say that it's impossible, but if that's your expectation, I think that you're approaching your potential RV lifestyle with bad expectations that are going to yield a poor ownership experience for you. This is the kind of thing, like I've sometimes called RVs an investment, and a lot of people just absolutely freak out over that. So we don't want to call it investment. It's entertainment. You are, like, if you go to the movie theater, you're trading money for entertainment. You're trading money for an experience. If you go see Mickey Mouse or something like that, you're trading money for an experience. That's very similar to what's happening back here. You're trading dollars for at least the opportunity to go out and sort of build your own adventure and have a good time. But that's the thing. Expect to be trading those dollars, not getting those back. And where I hear a lot of people get hung up on this is when they decide they're done with their RV, they say, well, I gave $23 for it, or I owe this many dollars on my RV loan, so I need that much out of it. Unfortunately, that's just not how it works. Keep in mind, what you owe on an RV has no bearing on its current market value. Just because somebody owes more than something's worth doesn't mean that that's how much you should have to pay for it. And really, that's no different in RVs from like the home market. The residential market goes up and down. Sometimes it's seller's market, sometimes it's buyer's market, and we accept that in the residential sector. But when it comes to RVing, it's like we don't always see that same connection. Now, this next thing, I don't think I could demonstrate any more candor and transparency. And I think it's an awesome representation of the organization for which I work, because I wouldn't be able to make videos like this if the leadership wasn't on board. We call this a relentless pursuit of transparency. And along with that, a major thing I think you need to know is that RVs are not perfect. I have never seen an RV I've described as perfect in terms of condition. They're made by hand. They are made fairly quickly overall. And as a result, that means that sometimes, brand new from the factory, there are sometimes flaws. That's one of the reasons I'm a big proponent of having even a brand new RV inspected by a third-party inspector or something like that, especially if you're a first-time RVer and you don't have a clue what you're looking at. And that's true whether you buy from us or not. I think that that's just fair information you deserve to know. But the fact is, these are things that too often need fixing. I once heard RVing described as fixing things in beautiful places, and I am not happy with the accuracy of that statement. It's not something that I love, but if your expectation is you're going to get this thing and it's going to be a problem-free philosophy, Hakuna Matata, I don't know that this will be a positive, happy experience for you. RVing, the camping lifestyle, is super, super fun. Some of my favorite memories as a kid were, growing up camping with my family. But I have also been in this industry for a while, and I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. The fact is, these things too often need repair work, and it's something that sometimes, because of service fulfillment and lead times, just because of the way this whole industry is structured, can take way longer than it really should. And I don't love a single thing that just came out of my mouth. And I think that it's a very, very important, realistic thing for you folks to know and wrap your heads around before you go diving into this adventure. Now, something that I think it sounds obvious, but a lot of folks never consider, is that if towing or driving an RV is an intimidating experience for you, this might not be the correct adventure for you. Because a lot of these things get very, very big very, very quickly. And it can be a lot to haul around. Even experienced RV drivers, I've bumped into some of them that go, man, like RV delivery drivers. They'll say things like, I don't mind doing this, but man, when they start getting close to 40 feet, it starts to be a little bit spooky and white knuckle for me. Or even, if you're driving a motorhome instead of towing a towable RV, sometimes, some motorhomes like this are smaller and it kind of just feels like you're driving a bigger truck or something like that. But some of them very quickly become very large, and it can feel kind of spooky and intimidating when you're behind the wheel of that thing, because it's not at all what most of us are used to or have ever experienced in our daily and or work lives. The fact is, unless you're going to have a site where the RV just parks and maybe you have it delivered there and you drive back and forth to visit it, which is a very cool way of doing things, by the way. But unless you're going to do that, which most folks don't, you're going to need some kind of truck and trailer setup. And the fact is, you're going to have to get it from A to B. And that can be an experience. If you're not prepared for that, this might not be the right adventure. How can you find out, though? That is, again, one of those areas where I recommend maybe renting before you buy, so that you can sort of discern, like, is this okay? Because we actually have a 72-hour return policy at Bish's RV, and the vast majority of the time it's exercised. First of all, people use it very rarely, but secondly, it's almost always because, man, I took it home last night and I couldn't even sleep. I was so stressed out about the thing and thinking about driving that thing all the time. I just couldn't do it. And we will actually swap people back out of their RVs, either find them a small one or potentially just refund their money. Most places don't have a policy like that, though. Most of the time, you don't know until it's too late and until you spent lots and lots of money on a trailer and potentially a truck to go along with it. Somewhat related to things like the true cost of ownership that I mentioned earlier and finding a time to use the RV, if you're not going to commit to maintaining the RV that you just spend lots of money on over the years, this is probably not something that you want to necessarily get into. Because, you know, to keep that RV that you spent that lots of money on in good working order, there is regular upkeep. You know, there's like quarterly, semi-annual and annual maintenance and things that you need to do on these, like checking roofs, having cleaners and conditioners used. Like there's a lot of things like making sure that your slide seals and gear mechanisms are lubricated as appropriate. The thing doesn't just take care of itself. If your goal and your expectation is to only go out and use the RV and never have to do anything to make it ready for you, then you might not want to get into this, because it unfortunately will not take long. You know, depending on where you live and the weather you experience, it could take a couple years to very quickly have some major problems that could completely knock your RV out of service and potentially maybe cause, health and safety issues, like leaks causing mold and stuff like that. So if you're not going to commit to the elbow grease or set the money aside in your annual budget to have somebody perform those regular upkeeps for you, you may want to look elsewhere. And a lot of people don't like that idea, but think about this. Like if you bought a car, you bought a motorcycle, or anything, your home, there's regular things you need to do to take care of them. Now, I will be the first to admit, RVs operate on a very accelerated maintenance schedule as compared to those other things that I just mentioned. But it's important to understand, because if you're like, I don't ever want to have to touch this thing, I just want to park it by my house and then just tow it to my destination, it's not if, but when, you're gonna have a very rude awakening and you're gonna be very upset with the whole experience. And kind of springboarding off that, I think the simplest way I can say this, and again, I take no pleasure in this, it's rather uncomfortable to even discuss, but the fact is, the RVing lifestyle is very often not an excellent fit for those folks who are not able of body. I'm not trying to be an ableist or anything. I'm trying to be a realist. I'm trying to help folks legitimately understand what they're getting into. At least once a week, I have someone ask me, if I am aware of RVs that are more, say, like handicap accessible. And like, this is an industry that just doesn't typically jive with ADA compliance. There's some rare instances, but it's uncommon. But, it takes some work. So whether we're talking about cleaning and maintenance, like if just an exterior cleaning on an RV, oh buddy, that'll get the shoulders burning. You need to Tom Sawyer that sucker. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, go back and read Tom Sawyer and go back to the chapter where he tricked everybody into thinking that painting a fence was so super fun so that everybody wanted to jump in and do it with him, because it's a bear of a project. So if you're going to be just doing an exterior cleaning on the RV, that's a good time to invite the grandkids over. But what I mean is not just cleaning and, getting on the roof and checking seals and doing regular upkeep and things like that, but also getting it hitched, unhitched, manipulating all sorts of things, cranking pop-ups up and down, whatever the case might be. This can be a physically demanding experience. And if you're okay with that, awesome, jump right on in. And a lot of people do it every single day. And people who have all kinds of various, like, I got a bad shoulder, I got a bad hip. People manage to do it all the time. But you need to understand that there is a physicality associated with using and maintaining an RV that I really think you should be prepared for. There's also just the general logistics of owning and using an RV that I think one should consider. And by that I mean things like, where are you going to store it? Do you have a place you can store it? And that kind of starts bleeding back into that true cost of ownership discussion, but also things like route planning. You may not be able to take your RV down the same highways and byways that you normally take your everyday driving vehicle, even if it's a bigger truck or something like that. If you've never seen it, there used to be this bridge. It was only 11 foot 8 inches tall, and I think it's like 12 4 or something like that now. But the thing was like a can opener. It was ripping the tops off of trailers left, right, and center, because if you're not familiar with where you're going, if you're not route planning, if you don't know where you can stop for fuel, because you can't just pull into any normal gas station, just physically getting the thing around or keeping it stored somewhere or any of that, it very quickly becomes something that you also have to juggle and consider, because you almost have to start thinking of like time as a resource, you know, which is not something most of us necessarily jump into in our daily lives. But when you have an RV, when you're getting ready to take it around, not just when are you going to take it out camping, but how much time is it going to take you to get there, get set up, get tore down, and get back, and how much time is that going to leave you to actually enjoy the thing? Those are all things that you want to try to wrap into an equation best you can. There's also, I call it the neighbor factor. It's very, very common here around the Midwest where I'm from, where park camping is by far the most dominant style of camping. There are people that boondock around here. It's just not the normal default in this area, and that can change from region to region. But I'll simply say this. I have met some of the best individuals during my time in this industry, and I have met some of the most unsavory people during my time in this industry. And I can tell you, everybody camps. Any race, creed, color, budget, bracket, literally anybody and everybody will go camping. You know, it's not like, well, at a certain point these people don't camp. Like, anyone can. And I've seen all sorts of people do it, from the person who sweeps the floors at businesses to the people who actually are the ones that sign the paychecks because they own the businesses. And you'll meet some very, very cool people. I've been fortunate. One time, I think I forgot a power cord or something for my camper, and I got there on a hot day. We had no power, no air conditioning. Neighbor had an extension. Neighbor was kind enough to let me use one until the next day when they had to leave, at which point I was able to basically get my own at that point and get going. And that's awesome. But I've also met people who don't think it's a problem when their dog comes and jumps up on your picnic table or poops in your area, or they don't think it's their responsibility to be responsible for their own children or something like that. Or, of course, everyone's favorite, the people that like crank up the generator, blare their Freedom Rock cranked up to 11, brother. You know, you'll meet all kinds of folks, and some of them are respectful of the fact that they have neighbors, and some of them have absolutely no chill and no care whatsoever. And if that's not something you're looking to get into, depending on where and how you plan to use your RV, you may want to consider maybe using it or taking it, using it differently or taking it somewhere else. Or, again, not fun for me to say, but maybe it's not potentially the right sort of fit for you, because that is a very real and very common thing depending on when and where you go camping. There's been a huge increase in the boondock movement for several reasons, but I think a lot of it is largely just to get away from people, which is something that I get. And some of this is a bit of a problem due to campground congestion. You know, if you are more of a park camper like me, the RVing landscape has changed significantly over the last couple of years. You know, pre-pandemic, there were about 8 million people actively registered as owners of RVs. Kind of rolling out of the prime pandemic phase, that number spiked to 15.5 million. It nearly doubled in only about a 2 or 3 year span. And during that time, the number of available campsites only grew by about 10%. Now, recently here, we've definitely seen more and more campsite development finally come to fruition, but more people can enter the industry more quickly than property owners, RV park owners, are able to upfit and expand if they're even interested or able, because it's timely and it's expensive to do that, you know. The thing there is that it means that there's that spontaneity that attracted a lot of people to the RV industry previously, where like, it's just, hey, it's the weekend, let's just go out and go camping this weekend, honey. That sounds like fun. Like, that's not something a lot of people can do. A lot of people report really needing to plan their trips sometimes months in advance because everything's all booked up. But here's also a really interesting, almost completely opposite thing. Asking around a lot of people that do a lot of traveling, you would think, well, you know, if they're traveling and they're roaming around and they're not sure where they're going to park one night, like, these people are going to be up a creek without a paddle, right? And I'm not finding that to be the case. In fact, What I'm actually hearing reported by a lot of people who do enjoy or are necessary, like for work reasons or just preference or pleasure or whatever, have to adopt a more mobile lifestyle. A lot of people are reporting that, you know, they'll actually show up at a park, like, you know, if they try to get on the computer and it says it's booked, they'll actually call parks a day or two out or sometimes the day of and see were there any cancellations, were there any no-shows. And what they're finding is that typically there's a fair number of vacancies almost anywhere they want to go. And part of that is because as the RV lifestyle exploded, necessity being the mother of invention, there were people who are pretty tech savvy who design these like third-party websites and kind of like AI bot sort of things that will like eat up available campground reservations, and then if they don't get resold to make money, that system will just kind of cancel at the last minute. You know, not every campground has really needed a last-minute cancellation policy or anything like that, so as a result, these things are able to eat up a bunch of available reservations sometimes with little to no recourse. Now, that is sort of changing and sort of getting a little better, but I think that there's a lot of people that book things way out in advance, and then for one reason or another, those bookings are not able to be fulfilled. So what I'm hearing is that although people need to book things in advance, they're almost always able to find something, maybe not necessarily their primary park they'd like to go to, but something available to park in even at the last minute. But there's a lot of people like, yeah, but I plan on boondocking. I'm going to be where I'm not directly next to a neighbor, so none of that really applies to me. Sure, but that doesn't mean you don't have challenges that you need to consider. Power resources, water resources, you know, you have limited holding tank capacity. You only have so much electricity. Are you going to be spending, you know, if you're going to be boondocking, typically you're now spending additional dollars on things like potentially generator, solar, all sorts of things to be able to make the RV function as long and effectively as possible when you don't have those park resources available. It's something that, you know, there's challenges both inside and outside parks that you really need to consider. Something else a lot of people don't consider whether you're going to be in or out of an RV park: reliable internet access. If you're a person whose personal preferences and or profession require reliable high-speed internet, this may be very problematic for you from time to time. Now keep in mind, the longer this video ages, you know, the number of solutions for mobile data use and the effectiveness of those solutions is getting better basically by the day. But there are times, and there are definitely areas where it's not something that's really functional. So, you know, like a lot of RV parks, oh, we have Wi-Fi, but most of the time it's horrendous in speed. It's terrible low bandwidth because usually they're trying to run a residential router to service 40 people. And it's not secure. Like, I wouldn't do my online banking off of park Wi-Fi or something like that. No freaking way. And there's a lot of areas, you know, camping by definition is sort of intended to get away from the daily brick and mortar of things, where cell phone signals, since you're in a more remote location, are sometimes spotty to non-existent. Now there's other things like Starlink that are helping kind of fulfill that need, and interestingly, Starlink tends to work best the furthest it is away from civilization effectively, but it also has limitations because it's satellite based. It requires a direct line of sight to the sky. If you've got a whole bunch of tree coverage above you or something like that, and you're in the middle of nowhere like in the Pacific Northwest, that's probably not going to be an awesome solution for you. That's another thing you're really going to want to look into and consider and factor into your budgets before you go buying one of these things and finding out after the fact, oh no, I literally can't work from the road the way that I wanted to. Now what do we do? Well, I don't know. Now you're in trouble, and I want to help you avoid that. So let me ask you, is there something you experienced RVers or the folks who are doing some shopping maybe have encountered over the years that I haven't thought of or mentioned in this video? Do everyone a favor and leave some comments, because I'd love to see the comment section on this video become kind of a little community help kind of center. You know, I think that the goal here, I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm trying to help folks understand what they might get into that maybe without experience, without actually getting into an RV, there's just stuff that I don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and I'm trying to help you, you know? And if you appreciate that, if you like how we went out of our way here to do something that is probably very contradictory to us generating business, because, I mean, simply stated, we don't get paid if you don't buy the things. And I'm kind of telling you sometimes that maybe you shouldn't buy the things. if you really appreciate how we're doing that for you, hit that like button, leave me a little note that says thanks nerd, subscribe if you're new with us, and know that we'll always do the best we can to continue what we are really calling that relentless pursuit of transparency. And again, this is sponsored from the very top of our company down. They were actually the ones that originally came up with the idea for this video and just asked me to kind of put it into words and to sort of plan it all out. So if you like what we're doing, leave us a note that says, hey, thanks, Bishes. And until next time, take care, stay safe, have fun, and hopefully, happy camping, everyone.